Welcome to the deep dive. We're really thrilled to have you with us today as we take this, well, a pretty fascinating journey into the absolute highest echelons of the English language.
And, modern digital culture, too.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're working from a really compelling stack of source material today. We're going to be analyzing excerpts from a masterclass on C2 Proficiency.
Right.
Now, just for some quick context here, C2 is the absolute peak of the Cambridge English exam scale.
It's the top.
The very top. It's the level of mastery aimed at people who are operating at the level of native-speaking academics or intellectuals, philosophers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but, our mission today isn't just about, memorizing a dictionary.
No, definitely not.
Or just learning how to pass an exam. The true mission of this deep dive is to really explore the ability to articulate philosophical nuance and to do it effortlessly.
Right.
We're going to be dissecting two incredibly rich, unscripted style dialogues from this masterclass to see exactly how high-level syntax and deep critical thinking how they intersect.
Yeah, and framing these dialogues is this truly profound, overarching theme. Right?
It really is.
Through these sources, we're going to look at how modern digital life, and specifically this whole era of the creator economy, the absolute dominance of algorithms, and the really rapid evolution of internet slang. We're looking at how all of that is fundamentally altering two critical things.
Which are the art we consume and the very language we use to discuss it.
Exactly. We are looking at a massive cultural and, honestly, neurological shift. And it's mirrored directly in how we communicate. Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this because I want to start by bringing this right down to a very common, almost visceral modern experience.
Yeah.
And this ties directly into the first dialogue from the masterclass.
Okay, I'm with you.
So have you, and I mean you, the listener, have you ever sat down to watch a movie? Like maybe a massive blockbuster, with the full expectation of just pure escapism.
We all have.
Right. You are sitting in the theater, the explosions are happening on screen, the orchestral music is swelling to this massive crescendo, and yet...
you feel absolutely nothing.
Nothing. You feel absolutely nothing. It is, it's like watching a spreadsheet in motion.
That's a great way to put it.
You can practically see the focus group data dictating every single beat of the story. The hero makes the perfectly timed quip.
Right, the mandatory joke.
Yeah, the obligatory emotional flashback hits at exactly minute 45, and then the massive CGI battle closes it out.
It's perfectly engineered.
Perfectly engineered and completely hollow. Have you felt that? Because suddenly, everything you watch, everything you scroll past, it just starts to feel fundamentally identical.
Yeah, it's a very pervasive modern fatigue, I think.
It really is.
And it is precisely where the speakers in our source masterclass begin their debate. They really tackle the commodification of art in the algorithmic age.
Right.
And the dialogue opens with what we can call the cynical view, which is a perspective we'll kind of adopt for a moment to understand the critique.
Yeah, let's look at Speaker A's point of view here.
So, Speaker A outlines that exact experience you just mentioned, going to the cinema and leaving feeling utterly despondent. And not just disappointed, but fundamentally bleak about the state of human expression.
Wow, bleak.
Yeah, bleak. Because they just watched another cookie-cutter superhero sequel. And the core argument here from the source is that the entertainment industry, and by extension, the entire independent creator economy.
Right, the YouTubers, the TikTokers.
Exactly. They have all abandoned original storytelling in favor of algorithmic pandering.
And, pandering is just such a precise word for what is happening here.
It really is.
Because we aren't just talking about giving the audience what they want, right?
Hey.
We're talking about a systemic flattening of art just to appease a distribution mechanism.
Yes.
I mean, if creators are engineering content specifically to hack human attention spans, are they treating art less like expression and more like a casino game, like a slot machine?
Oh, absolutely. That analogy of a slot machine is spot on. It makes me think of industrial farming, too.
Oh, like a monoculture.
Exactly, a digital monoculture. You know how in agriculture, if you only plant one highly optimized crop because it yields the highest immediate profit,
you eventually destroy the soil.
You destroy the soil. It loses its complex nutrients, its biodiversity, and it becomes incredibly fragile.
Wow.
And it feels like algorithms are doing that exact thing to human creativity.
Yeah.
We are so focused on the yield, the attention, the clicks, the retention, that the creative soil is completely depleted.
Right. The algorithm dictates the crop, and creators are just forced to plant it.
Yeah, and that digital monoculture analogy maps perfectly onto the economic realities that are discussed in the masterclass.
Oh, definitely.
The sources highlight how this environment forces art to become relentlessly derivative. And derivative is one of those great C2 vocabulary words they focus on.
Unoriginal copied, right.
Right. When one specific formula, like, let's say, a hyper-edited, fast-paced video essay format or a specific type of narrative arc in a film, when that proves it can reliably capture attention and generate a high yield, the algorithm rewards it.
Of course it does.
It pushes that format to the very top of the feed. And consequently, every other creator observing that success abandons their own unique stylistic variations to replicate that exact formula.
It just copy it.
They become derivative. It triggers what the speakers describe as a race to the bottom.
Right, the race to the bottom. I really want to dig into that concept for a second because I think it's crucial to understand the mechanics of this cynicism.
Yeah, let's do it.
A race to the bottom isn't about people actively wanting to make bad art.
Huh.
I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I want to make something terrible today.
No, definitely not.
It's about an environment where the incentives are entirely misaligned with quality.
Yes.
I mean, if your primary goal, or rather the goal that's imposed upon you by the platform you're publishing on, is simply to stop a user from scrolling past your content in like a fraction of a second.
Which is incredibly hard to do.
It's so hard. You don't need to craft a masterpiece of subtle human emotion to do that.
No, you really don't.
You just need a louder sound effect. You need a more controversial and divisive headline.
Right.
Or a thumbnail that literally hacks the human brain's threat detection system.
Exactly. The competition is no longer about who can make the most resonant piece of art.
Right.
It's about who can stimulate the basest neurological reflexes most efficiently.
That is just so depressing.
It is, but, and this is where the masterclass pivots, it introduces a really robust counterargument to balance out this heavy cynicism.
Right, we have Speaker B stepping in.
Exactly. Speaker B presents the optimistic perspective, and they argue that this cynical view is plagued by historical amnesia.
Historical amnesia, I love that phrasing.
Or, viewing the past through rose-tinted glasses.
Right.
The fundamental counterpoint from the source is this. Mass-produced, highly formulaic, derivative entertainment has always existed, long before algorithms or the internet.
That is such a fascinating historical reality check, honestly.
It really changes the perspective.
Because we do this, right? We have this tendency to compare the absolute worst, most mindless content of today with the absolute pinnacle of art from the past.
Exactly.
We compare like a 15-second TikTok dance trend to a Stanley Kubrick film.
Which is a wildly unfair metric.
It's totally unfair.
Right.
We forget the penny dreadfuls of the Victorian era.
Oh, the penny dreadful.
Yeah, which were literally cheap, sensationalized, formulaic, serialized stories pumped out purely for profit.
Yep.
We forget the endless, interchangeable soap operas of the 1950s, or the massive stacks of cheap pulp fiction. Humans have literally always had a massive appetite for low-effort, highly consumable entertainment.
The human appetite hasn't changed at all.
No, it hasn't.
What the optimistic perspective in the dialogue emphasizes is that the only thing that has fundamentally changed is the technology of distribution.
Oh, right.
And that shift has resulted in a massive democratization of creation. This is a monumental, paradigm-shifting reality.
Because the gatekeepers are gone.
Completely. For the entirety of human history, the barrier to entry for mass communication was incredibly high.
Yeah, if you want to make a movie.
To make a film, you needed millions of dollars. You needed physical film stocks, specialized cameras, lighting crews, studio backing.
And you needed access to a physical distribution network of movie theaters.
Exactly. The gatekeepers held absolute power over what was seen and what wasn't.
And today, that barrier simply does not exist.
It's gone.
I mean, an independent filmmaker right now can shoot a visually stunning, emotionally complex narrative on the smartphone in their pocket.
It's amazing.
They can edit it on a laptop, and with a single tap, they can distribute it instantly to a potential audience of billions across the globe.
Billions.
The financial gatekeepers have been entirely bypassed. So in theory, this should be a golden age of diverse, avant-garde, boundary-pushing art.
Because the people who were locked out now have the tools.
Right. The people who were previously locked out of the studio system now own the means of production and distribution.
However, the masterclass synthesizes these two views by acknowledging the harsh reality of this democratization.
Right. There's always a catch.
It is a profound double-edged sword. Yes, the barrier to entry is practically zero, but because the barrier is low, the market is completely and utterly saturated.
Saturated is an understatement.
Right. There is no longer a scarcity of content. There is a superabundance.
Superabundance, yeah.
When everyone on the planet has a global megaphone, the sheer volume of noise becomes absolutely deafening.
So, okay, how does a creator actually survive in an environment of superabundance? Because this brings us to the real crux of the tension here.
It does.
To rise above the noise of a saturated market, independent creators, even the ones who genuinely want to make high art, deeply nuanced work,
they're stuck.
They are forced to play the exact same algorithmic game as the massive studios.
Yeah.
They're trapped in this endless production loop. You can't spend 4 years agonizing over the perfect, subtle indie documentary if the platform's algorithm demands that you upload a new piece of content every single week.
Just to maintain your visibility.
Right, just to keep your subscriber count from tanking. The velocity required to remain relevant is just entirely hostile to the patience required to make great art.
And this creates a structural conflict between two concepts that are explored deeply in the source material.
Okay, what are they?
The intrinsic value of art versus its viral potential.
Ooh. Intrinsic value versus virality.
Right. So intrinsic value is the worth a piece of work holds in its own right. Its capacity to evoke genuine emotion, its aesthetic beauty, its philosophical depth.
The real substance.
Exactly. Viral potential, on the other hand, is merely a measure of its frictionlessness.
For frictionlessness.
How easily and rapidly it can be transmitted from one user to another across a network.
And those two metrics are often fundamentally at odds with each other.
Very often, yes.
I mean, if you are trying to capture the zeitgeist, the defining spirit or mood of a particular period in history, you need to sit back. You need to observe deeply and synthesize complex ideas.
Yes, that takes time.
But if you are trying to maximize viral potential, you have to strip away complexity.
You have to dumb it down.
You sand down the edges of your argument so it fits neatly into a 60-second reel. You rely on established tropes. You prioritize instant, shallow gratification over slow, meaningful resonance.
It's inevitable.
And when intrinsic value is constantly sacrificed on the altar of viral potential, the overall cultural output just flattens.
Yet, even acknowledging this flattening, the optimistic perspective in the dialogue speaker B, they hold firm.
Oh, really?
Yeah, concluding with the assertion that cream ultimately rises to the top.
Cream rises to the top.
The argument is that truly transcendent art, the work that possesses profound intrinsic value, will still find its audience.
Right.
Regardless of the algorithmic noise.
Okay, but how?
Well, it requires a massive shift in behavior. It requires the rise of the discerning consumer.
The discerning consumer. Okay, I like that phrase. But it places a massive burden on the audience.
It does. It puts the responsibility on us.
Right. It means we can no longer afford to be passive. If you sit back and just let the algorithm feed you, you're only going to consume the digital monoculture.
That's all you'll get.
To find the transcendent art, you have to actively sift through the mediocrity. You have to actively seek out the challenging, the weird, the slow-paced, and the nuanced.
And that necessity leads directly to the chilling fear that concludes the first dialogue in the masterclass.
Which is?
The fear that we are cultivating an audience that is losing its cognitive endurance.
Cognitive endurance. Let's really sit with that concept for a minute.
It's a heavy one.
We are talking about the mental stamina required to process complex information.
Right.
The ability to sit with ambiguity, to endure the slow build of a narrative without demanding a punchline or an explosion every 30 seconds.
Exactly.
If you are constantly exposed to hyper-stimulating bite-sized content, your brain literally adapts to that pace.
It rewires itself.
Yeah, the neural pathways associated with deep, sustained focus begin to atrophy. It is terrifying to think that we might not just be producing worse art, but we might actually be losing the neurological capacity to appreciate great art when we're actually presented with it.
Seldom do we see a society reckon with the erosion of its own attention span on such a massive scale. And that reality requires an incredible amount of precision to articulate effectively.
Wait, stop right there.
What?
I want to highlight exactly what you just did.
What did I do?
Seldom do we see. You just naturally deployed the exact rhetorical maneuver I noticed when reviewing the source material.
You caught the shift in syntax.
I did, and as a perfect bridge into the second major theme of our deep dive.
Perfect. Let's get into it.
Because when I was going through the transcripts of the masterclass, there were these moments where the speakers suddenly sounded immensely authoritative.
Like they were commanding a boardroom.
Exactly. They weren't just using complex vocabulary. The very architecture of their sentences changed. For instance, instead of saying, an independent filmmaker has never had the tools, Speaker B said, never before has an independent filmmaker had the tools.
Yeah, it hits differently.
And you just did it. You said, seldom do we see a society, instead of we seldom see a society.
I did.
Why does disrupting the standard word order like that command so much respect? It sounds like an academic heavyweight.
Well, what you are observing is a structural device known as negative inversion.
Negative inversion.
And to understand why it commands respect, we have to look past the elementary rules of grammar and really examine the psychology of syntax.
Okay, the psychology of syntax. I'm intrigued.
In a standard declarative English sentence, the listener's brain is perfectly comfortable. The subject arrives, followed predictably by the verb, and then followed by the object.
The dog chased the ball.
Exactly. It is a steady, familiar rhythm. Your brain processes it passively.
So it's like the linguistic equivalent of cruising down the highway on autopilot.
That's a perfect analogy. But persuasion often requires jolting the listener out of autopilot.
You have to wake them up.
Right. When a native speaker operating at a C2 level wants to add dramatic emphasis or frame a concept with a sense of extreme rarity or gravity, they disrupt that comfortable rhythm.
How do they do that?
They take the negative adverb words like never, seldom, rarely, or phrases like not only, and they pull it to the absolute front of the sentence.
And by pulling the negative to the front, you create this kind of syntactic suspension bridge.
That is a brilliant way to put it.
Oh, thanks.
Because the rules of English dictate that when you front a negative adverb, you must invert the subject and the auxiliary verb.
Oh, I see.
So we seldom see becomes seldom do we see. It is not only becomes not only is it.
So neurologically, when the sentence begins with the negative, the listener experiences a micro delay.
Exact.
The brain registers the negation first, and then it has to wait in suspense for the subject and the action to be revealed.
It forces the listener to lean in.
Right. You are essentially grabbing them by the collar and demanding their full cognitive attention before you even finish the thought.
It frames the entire proposition with weight. Let's consider a real-world scenario outside of an academic masterclass.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine a high-stakes boardroom meeting, or maybe a courtroom.
A courtroom, yeah.
An executive could say, I have rarely encountered a structural failure of this magnitude.
Sure, that sounds professional.
It communicates the information fine. But if they say, rarely have I encountered a structural failure of this magnitude, the temperature in the room literally drops.
Oh, wow, yeah, I feel that. Rarely have I encountered.
The inversion elevates the register of the speech. It signals to everyone listening that the speaker is in absolute control of the language.
It signals mastery.
Absolute mastery.
It demonstrates that the speaker isn't just scrambling to find the right words in real time. They are actively manipulating the structural integrity of the language to bend the listener's perception.
And that concept, the structural integrity of language, is the perfect pivot point for us.
How so?
Because if we revere this beautiful, complex, highly structured grammar, if we see negative inversion as the absolute pinnacle of persuasive eloquence, how on earth do we reconcile that with the reality of how human beings actually communicate on the internet today?
Oh, right.
It's a huge disconnect.
We go from never before has an independent filmmaker to literally dropping a skull emoji to signify that something was mildly amusing.
Exactly.
It feels like we are looking at two entirely different species of communication.
It does.
Which brings us to the second massive debate in the masterclass. The evolution, or as some argue, the catastrophic decay of the English language.
And the source material frames this tension by outlining two deeply opposed academic camps, the descriptivists and the prescriptivists.
Right, okay.
To understand this debate, we really need to understand their fundamentally different worldviews regarding what language actually is.
Okay, well, let's start with the descriptivists.
Okay.
Because I actually find their perspective incredibly liberating. The descriptivists are essentially the scientists, or maybe the anthropologists, of language.
That's a good comparison.
They do not believe in a moral hierarchy of grammar. Their job is simply to observe and document how humans are communicating in the wild right now.
Just taking notes.
Exactly. If millions of teenagers start using a completely new grammatical structure or some bizarre acronym on TikTok, a descriptivist doesn't scold them.
They don't correct their grammar.
No. They view language as a living, breathing organism that is supposed to adapt to its environment.
And historically, the descriptivist view is largely how language has survived at all.
Right.
English is a massive, messy amalgamation of Anglo-Saxon, Norman French, Latin, and Greek. It has never been static.
No, never.
I mean, Shakespeare invented thousands of words simply because he needed them to fit the meter of his plays.
Yeah, he just made them up.
The Victorians had incredibly complex, hyper-local slang. From a descriptivist standpoint, the internet is simply the latest, albeit the fastest, environment forcing language to adapt.
Which is why I want to champion the descriptivist defense of internet slang that's presented in the masterclass.
Let's hear it.
The sources point out that pearl-clutching articles calling internet slang irreparably damaging to human communication are deeply flawed.
They're very pedantic.
Incredibly pedantic. There is an entrenched assumption among traditionalists that brevity equates to a lack of depth. That short automatically means stupid.
Right, that if it's an acronym, it's mindless.
Exactly. But that assumption completely ignores the mechanics of high-context communication, particularly when we look at memes.
Yes. The masterclass uses memes as a primary battleground for this debate.
They do.
So how do you defend the meme as a tool of sophisticated communication?
By looking at what it actually accomplishes. A meme functions as a highly compressed linguistic and cultural file.
A compressed file, right.
It takes layers of incredibly complex socio-political critique, generational anxiety, deep irony, and compresses it into a single low-resolution image and maybe 4 words of text.
It's incredibly efficient.
Right. If I send you the meme of the dog sitting at a table in a room completely engulfed in flames saying, "This is fine."
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Right. I'm not just sending a picture of a dog.
No, you are transmitting a specific, complex state of modern existential dread.
Yes.
You are communicating the feeling of trying to maintain a facade of normalcy while the systemic structures around you literally collapse.
Exactly. And if I tried to explain that exact feeling using traditional prose, it would take me 3 paragraphs of dense text.
Please tell us.
The meme does it instantly. Because to unpack the joke, the receiver has to share a massive database of cultural context.
Which is high context communication.
Yes. When that high context transfer works, it is arguably one of the most efficient forms of complex communication we have ever invented. It is not a lack of nuance. It is nuance coded in efficiency.
That is a very compelling defense of semantic shift.
Thank you.
However, a deep dive requires us to impartially examine the counterweight.
Okay, let's hear the other side.
The prescriptivists, representing the opposing camp in the masterclass, offer a grave warning that cannot be dismissed simply as academic snobbery.
So, if descriptivists are the anthropologists, what are the prescriptivists?
They are the guardians of the structural integrity. They believe there are correct and incorrect ways to use language grounded in established rules.
Okay, I can understand that.
And their core fear isn't just about people using the wrong word.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It is about the erosion of nuance and the tangible limits of human thought.
Oh, wow.
This brings us to a profound philosophical concept at the heart of their argument. Linguistic determinism.
Linguistic determinism. Okay, let's break that down. This is the idea that the structure and vocabulary of the language you speak actively dictates and limits the way you're able to think.
Yes.
Or, as the masterclass beautifully summarizes it, the limits of our language become the limits of our world.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that if you do not have the vocabulary to distinguish between subtle gradations of emotion or abstract logic, your capacity to conceptualize those differences begins to atrophy.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, consider the emotional spectrum. If your vocabulary for sadness is reduced over time to just sad or a crying emoji,
Right.
you lose the cognitive architecture provided by words like melancholy, ennui, wistfulness, or grief.
Oh, I see.
Each of those words contains a specific situational and philosophical context. A crying, laughing emoji is a blunt instrument.
It really is.
It cannot convey the difference between wry amusement, hysterical laughter, or deeply nervous chuckling.
Wait, hold on. I see the appeal of that argument. I really do. But there is a fatal flaw in strict linguistic determinism.
Okay, what is it?
If language strictly determines thought, how do pre-linguistic babies figure out complex spatial puzzles? How do stroke victims who have lost their speech still demonstrate complex problem-solving abilities? Doesn't thought clearly precede language?
That is the classic and entirely valid scientific rebuttal to strict determinism.
Right.
Cognitive scientists largely agree that base cognition, spatial reasoning, basic emotional states, object permanence exists independently of language.
Right.
However, the masterclass isn't arguing that without language you cannot think at all.
Oh, okay. What are they arguing?
It is arguing that without advanced language you cannot engage in complex, philosophical, abstract thought.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. It's like a painter's palette.
Let's hear the analogy.
A painter with only primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, can still paint a picture. They can depict a house or a tree.
Right.
But no matter how inherently brilliant they are fundamentally limited in the subtle shading and atmospheric depth they can capture compared to a painter who has a palette of 400 distinct pigments.
That's beautifully said.
The vocabulary is the pigment.
Exactly. The prescriptivist fear is that if we abandon complex syntax like the negative inversions we admired earlier, and if we allow our advanced vocabulary to be replaced by a handful of standardized digital acronyms,
we're actively throwing away our pigments.
Yes. We lose the ability to construct nuanced legal arguments, to articulate subtle policy differences, or to navigate the gray areas of human morality.
But the masterclass introduces a powerful socioeconomic dynamic into this debate that really complicates the prescriptivist panic.
Does.
Because we have to ask, who gets to decide which pigments are the correct ones?
Right. Who is in charge?
Historically, hasn't the enforcement of a standardized lexicon and proper grammar largely been wielded as a tool for gatekeeping?
It is an undeniable historical reality. For centuries, strict adherence to the so-called King's English, or the academic standard, was a deliberate mechanism to maintain class divides.
Exactly.
It was a visible, audible marker of who had the wealth to access elite education and who did not.
It was a way to keep people out.
If you couldn't conjugate your verbs according to the rules of the aristocracy, your ideas were dismissed, regardless of their inherent value. You were locked out of the halls of power, politics, and publishing.
Right. And from that perspective, the internet is triggering a massive, necessary paradigm shift.
A democratization of language.
Yes. We are witnessing semantic shifts, the creation of new words, the changing definitions of old ones happening in real time.
Yeah.
It's driven entirely by the masses.
It is.
It isn't a board of academics in an ivory tower dictating how we are allowed to speak. It's a global, decentralized linguistic democracy.
It is a democracy, certainly. But the masterclass provides a very sharp rebuttal to the idea that all linguistic democratization is inherently positive.
Oh.
And the speaker uses a complex inverted conditional to deliver it.
Let's hear it.
They state, had we not preserved the structural integrity of English over the centuries, we would lack the very tools required to debate this shift.
Had we not preserved another syntactic disruption to assert authority.
Indeed. But let's look at the substance of that defense.
Okay.
The speaker makes a critical distinction between an organic semantic shift and the wholesale dumbing down of discourse.
What's the difference?
An organic semantic shift is healthy. Inventing a new word to describe a new technological reality like doom scrolling expands the language.
Right, we needed a word for that.
But losing the ability to construct a coherent, logical paragraph because we have become accustomed to communicating solely in fragmented, high-context bursts, that is dumbing down.
Because the high-context communication of a meme only works if everyone shares the context.
Precisely. Memes are brilliant for in-group communication, but they rarely translate into meaningful, long-form, cross-cultural discourse.
That's true.
You cannot write a complex international climate treaty or a nuanced philosophical treatise or conduct a delicate diplomatic negotiation using memes.
God, I hope not.
You absolutely need a robust, shared, rigidly standardized vocabulary for that. The grammatical rules are the structural beams of the bridge.
I see.
If we discard the rules in the name of democratization, the bridge of communication collapses under the weight of complex, heavy ideas.
So we are left with this incredible tension. The descriptivists arguing that clinging to rigid grammatical rules while the world changes is a futile, losing battle against the natural evolution of human connection.
Yes.
And the prescriptivists warning that if we let the rules erode too far, we lose the capacity for the deep thought that those connections require.
And historically, the language always finds an equilibrium. English will survive the internet just as it survived the invention of the printing press.
People panicked about the printing press too, right?
Oh, completely. When mass-produced books first appeared, there was a widespread panic that the purity of the spoken oral tradition would be destroyed and that mass literacy would degrade the quality of thought.
That sounds very familiar.
But the language adapted, it incorporated new structures, it will adapt to the digital age as well, though it may look and sound profoundly different.
If we pull all the way back and look at the entirety of this deep dive, it is genuinely striking how both dialogues from the masterclass, the debate over the commodification of art and the debate over the evolution of language, are ultimately circling the exact same modern anxiety.
It is the fear of losing depth in a world optimized for speed.
Precisely. In the first half, we explored the fear that the algorithmic digital monoculture is stripping nuance from our art.
Right.
It forces creators into a race to the bottom, sacrificing intrinsic value for viral potential, leaving us with hollow, derivative entertainment that threatens our cognitive endurance.
And in the second half, we explored the fear that hyperfast digital communication is stripping nuance from our vocabulary.
Linguistic determinism.
The fear of linguistic determinism, exactly. That by relying on standardized slang and fragmented sentences, we are limiting the palette of our own thoughts,
leaving us with a diminished capacity to navigate the complexities of the world.
Both debates are desperately wrestling with what it means to hold on to complexity, structure, and meaning in an era that overwhelmingly rewards simplicity, frictionlessness, and speed.
And we also saw how mastering the language, understanding the mechanics of things like negative inversion, allows you to command authority and pull people back into a space of deep focus.
Which brings this entire exploration back to you, the listener.
Yes, back to you.
We want you to deeply reflect on your own habits as you navigate this digital landscape. When you are scrolling through social media, absorbing the endless feed of content, or when you are firing off a rapid, emoji-filled text message,
ask yourself,
are you participating in a healthy, organic, semantic shift? Or are you, in some small way, contributing to the shrinking of your own vocabulary and attention span?
And when you choose what to consume tonight, how discerning are you going to be?
That's the big question.
Are you just going to accept the crop that the digital monoculture has grown for you, looking for that easy, friction-free dopamine hit?
Or are you willing to actively seek out the art, the articles, the films that demand a little more cognitive endurance and reward you with genuine intrinsic value? The agency in that choice is entirely yours.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your day.
Okay, let's hear it.
We talked extensively about how algorithms are mathematically engineered to hack our attention spans to keep us scrolling passively.
We did.
And we talked about linguistic determinism, the terrifying idea that the limits of your language become the literal limits of your reality.
Yes.
If the traditionalists are even partially right about that, then perhaps the ultimate act of rebellion against an algorithm designed to keep you shallow and distracted isn't just turning off your screen.
What is the rebellion then?
Perhaps the ultimate rebellion is simply taking the time to learn and actively use a wider, deeper vocabulary to describe your reality.
Wow.
To refuse to let your inner world, your complex emotional landscape, be reduced to a handful of trending acronyms and standardized reactions. To demand the full spectrum of the palette.
A rebellion of nuance. I think that is a very powerful place to end.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly complex deep dive. It takes real cognitive endurance to engage with these kinds of abstract, structural, and philosophical concepts.
It really does.
And we deeply appreciate you sticking with us and exploring these ideas. Keep questioning the algorithms that curate your world. Keep testing the boundaries of your own linguistic expression.
And remember that when the world tries to feed you cookie-cutter answers, you have the capacity to demand and articulate something so much more profound.
We will see you next time.